We always enjoy talking a little hoops with George Sedano, co-host with Keyshawn Johnson on 710 ESPN on Los Angeles Morning Show. Of course, co-host of the NBA Lockdown podcast, great podcast. And, of course, you can catch him on one of my new favorite shows, co-host on Nacion Mondays at 5 p.m. on ESPN, too. George, how you been, pal?
I'm good, buddy. How are you, Rich?
I'm doing well. Good to talk to you as always. I know it's been a crazy and wild last week or so when you talk a little NBA and the free agent signing period. And let's get right into it. What's the latest on Hayward right now? Because, this is kind of – it's bizarre because now the Boston Celtics are really trying to create enough salary cap room to give him that 4-year, $128 million max contract. I know there's a couple players maybe that they're discussing a trade involving Smart, Crowder, or Bradley. But what's the latest on that situation?
That'll get done. Look, Jay Crowder and Avery Bradley are on really good contracts, and they're good players. So I feel like they'll get those guys moved. Worst case scenario, if they have to renounce the rights of their free agents, then they could do that. But I just think this is just a little speed bump here, and I think it'll all get sorted out.
Best fit for Hayward with the Boston Celtics. I mean, I think it's a good fit. I really do. I mean, he's got the ties to Brad Stevens. When this deal is officially, quote, done, paper to pen, do the Boston Celtics, have they inched closer to the Cleveland Cavaliers, or are they still far apart when it comes to competing against the Cavs?
I think inched is the right word. They're still far apart. I think that, they're already a 50-plus win team. He may add another 3 or 4 wins to their overall roster because they're going to lose something, obviously,
right,
whether it's Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley, or whatever. So, yeah, okay, they were a team that pushed the Cavs to 5 last year. Barring an injury, they're a team that maybe pushes them to 6 this year. So I guess if you want to say inching closer, that's probably the right analogy.
It's being generous, right? I mean, what's going on with Cleveland? Because by all reports, they lowballed Chauncey Billups, one of your colleagues over at ESPN, as far as offering him a GM spot. You look at what the Knicks were paying Jackson, which was absurd. You look at Pelinka with no GM experience as well, and the money that he's been getting. So it's amazing to me. You've got an owner that's worth a boatload of money, a franchise that is worth a boatload of money, and you're kind of toying with the idea, let's kind of waste potentially LeBron's last year here. I don't get that. So give me a little clarity on the situation in Cleveland.
Yeah, Dan Gilbert is a stubborn dude, man. And, he's not a good owner. You know what I mean? He's looked into everything, okay? He looked into the fact that the greatest player on the planet happened to grow up, whatever it is, 60 miles from him or 50 miles from him, and then looked into a number of lottery picks after the fact. He's done nothing as an owner that makes you think that he's a good owner. Outside of good fortune, nothing says that he's done a good job. Again, though, but you're going into an offseason where you need a GM in place. I mean, because you would think this, right? The Cavs and LeBron's looking around and saying, well, wait a second. A week ago, Indiana got weaker. Now that paved the road a lot clearer and easier for us and me. And then all of a sudden, boom, well, now you got Hayward going to Boston. Maybe there's a little bump in the road. The teams in the Western Conference, they're the teams in the Western Conference. I can't control what's going on there. So if you're Cleveland, you're saying to yourself, do we make a corresponding move? Do we have to, what kind of other moves can we make to give him a better supporting cast? Are they going to try to move Kevin Love? I mean, I just think it's bad timing for everything, especially this is not a team that won 20 games. This is a team that made another trip to the NBA Finals. They got routed by Golden State, and you got one potential year left on LeBron. So I would think you would get all your ducks in a row here. I mean, yeah, that would be the rational thing to do, but we're dealing with a guy who's clearly irrational at this point and not happy about the fact that there was an alleged deal on the table or multiple deals on the table, and when he went to LeBron to get his kind of okay and blessing about committing beyond this season, he wouldn't do it. And, yeah, this is what you have, a little bit of turmoil there. So I'm not surprised. He doesn't want to commit to anything long-term because he doesn't think LeBron will be there. And look, let's be honest here. I don't think LeBron will be there either.
Either do I.
Either do I. The more I think about it, and why should he, right? He's done everything he had to when he went back. So I hate to do the hypothetical game, but if or when he opts out after next year, again, I know we're so far away from this, but where do you think in the back of his mind he's thinking to himself, where can I go? Where would be that landing spot?
I think there's two places he's contemplating, the Lakers and the Heat. And I think that's it. And I think that, look, what saves the Heat potentially in this is that they're in the East and he's familiar, right? Yep. Now the problem is, him and Riley had a little bit of an icy relationship at the end. There's been some barbs thrown between the two over the past couple of years, but it's nowhere near as toxic as it was with Dan Gilbert.
No way.
Okay? Like that's not even close. And LeBron has an excellent relationship with the owner in Miami and Mickey Harrison. Like that didn't change. But so I think that is a slim possibility that he goes back to Miami. Like, I don't think it's by any stretch something I would report, but I think he contemplated, and I think he's also looking for a place to land with some familiar faces, whether that's the Banana Boat crew of him and Chris Paul and Carmelo and Dwayne Wade, and Miami could do that. Like, Pat would move heaven and earth to make that happen, because Riley has basically told me a couple of years ago that all he wants is one more.
Yep.
And his words to me were, George, I may not even stick around for the parade. And what that means to me is LeBron that could be his kingdom again.
Right.
That may not be the case anywhere else in the league, to be quite honest with you. At least not a destination that he would want to be at.
Nah, that's a great point you bring. And listen, Riley's a grinder, right? That's kind of the difference, and this is where I wanted to go, the difference from a guy like Riley as opposed to a guy like Phil Jackson, who basically just cast a check, and we saw the mess that is, the current mess, and that has been the New York Knicks. When it's all said and done, first of all, I find it interesting now, all of a sudden, Melo, all right, a little more open, because I never understood this. Why would you turn around and whether they forced Jackson out or Jackson said to Dolan, my heart's just not into it, but yet you keep him around to make a draft pick because you think you're going to be able to use that player to fit your scheme, your triangle offense. Now, I know that player was still sought after by other teams, so you forget about the triangle for a moment, but it just seems like that franchise right now, they're not even in flux, they're not even in limbo. They're absolutely clueless, and then you have these bogus reports that maybe Isaiah Thomas is going to be a dark horse. I mean, if that happens, keep me away from sharp objects. We know it's not going to, but how about the Knicks right now and the mess that they are? And you almost feel bad for Melo. You almost feel bad, and you feel bad for Porzingis, who shouldn't have skipped that meeting. I criticize him for that, but you've got two potential players you can build around, and you've got nothing else.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. The thing's a mess, and we've talked about this, pretty much every time I've been on, that the thing is a mess.
Well, I'm hoping you can maybe just give me something positive this time.
Well, Phil's not there, right?
Exactly.
But the big problem is that Dolan is still there, right? And as long as Dolan is in power, it's going to be really hard to kind of figure this thing out. Now, look, the silver lining is David Griffin is the guy they hired. Clearly, David Griffin knows what it's like to work with an owner who's a big pain in the butt, and may not be the easiest person to deal with in Dan Gilbert. So maybe David Griffin can be the guy to help put the Knicks back together and put them in at least decent shape. Look, Donnie Walsh was doing that.
I know.
And look, the Knicks weren't a championship caliber team, but they were a pretty good playoff team. They were a 50-plus win team when Donnie Walsh was there. And I think that David Griffin could potentially be that. So that would be my answer.
What's been the biggest surprise movement-wise? Was it Paul George and Paul George making the move to Oklahoma City? Because I don't think. I mean, did you have any inkling? I don't think anyone saw that coming.
No, absolutely not. When Ramona Shelburne reported that, I was stunned. I couldn't believe that had happened. And you know what? Good for Sam Presti. He's going to probably lose Russell Westbrook at some point, and it could be next year because he's got an opt-out. And he puts him and George together, sees what he can do, tries to recruit them, tries to see if it works. And if it doesn't work, fine. He's gotten rid of the one bad contract he had in Oladipo, and he starts with a blank canvas again, and they do the rebuild via the draft like they always have done. And Sam Presti's one of the best drafters in the sport. So, yeah, I think it was a brilliant move.
Two more quickies for you, and I appreciate it as always. You know, when you look at a team like the Golden State Warriors, you always make the joke, well, the only team that can beat the Warriors are the Warriors, or you got to strip down their roster. And I didn't think Iguodala was going to flirt with any of these other teams. I mean, why not? For the money he's made in his career, he can win a couple more rings. He's 33. He understands his role. He's an important cog to that offense as well as defense. We saw that 2 years ago when he won the Finals MVP award. What does it say for Kevin Durant when he turns around with his contract now, and that's going to free up? It'll be $9 million less than the maximum he could have taken. What does that say about Durant, and what does it also say about, you know, kind of that staying power with Golden State? Because I know we've said this before, and forgive me for repeating myself, I don't believe if they stay where they're at with the players, that core that they have, and they're healthy, then to me, they're the team to beat again, you know, next year and potentially the following year. But what does it say, first of all, with Durant and what he's able to do with that contract and the money-wise to help the team out? And then just overall, give me your thoughts on Golden State moving forward.
Yeah, listen, I think that it's brilliant if they want to keep that core together. And you know, they want to be a transcendent, generational type team. If that's what you want to do, you're going to have to do that. Somebody's going to have to sacrifice somewhere, and Kevin is willing to do that, at least right now, to keep this core together. And it's smart business. Now, maybe some other players don't love it. Look, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh did it the first, you know, contract in Miami.
Yep.
Clearly, they were not willing to do that beyond that. And then you saw them break up,
yep.
Right? Like that's not the only reason, but that's part of it. So I think that that's the way you do it. You know, you have to, when you have a hard cap league, and I know there's a soft cap because of the luxury tax, but at the end of the day, if you want to add players, you're restricted on how you're going to add those players. So somebody's going to have to give somewhere. So I think it's great. And I think that if they stay healthy, will be that generational type team that we've been discussing.
Last one for you with the Clippers. And I heard comments, I guess, to paraphrase, Blake Griffin wants to just keep his legacy intact. And I look at the Clippers and I'm thinking to myself, what legacy, right? I mean, you lose Chris Paul. You look at these teams that want to compete in the Western Conference, and I look at the Clippers. I mean, that's every year it seems as though the Clippers are like the Dallas Cowboys, right? On paper, this should be a playoff team. You look at the Clippers, I mean, do they have any shot, say, within the next 5 years? Can they compete? When I say compete, can they take Golden State? Can they be there in the Western Conference Finals? Do they have the makeup, or do you think potentially going forward they'll have the makeup to be a player in the Western Conference?
No. The answer is no. It's flatly no. Not as currently constituted.
Yep.
I mean, I guess DeAndre can opt out next year, but I just don't see a path for them to be a championship caliber team anytime soon.
Yeah, either do I. I mean, it's yeah. Hey, listen, you can't begrudge guys for wanting to stay where they are and taking the money, and you make the argument who wants to win a title, who wants to cash in. I mean, it's all subjective. We just give the opinions. Listen, I know I got to let you go. Keep up the great work. Always enjoy the NBA Lockdown podcast, and of course, you can catch George, co-host with Keyshawn Johnson, 710 ESPN Los Angeles Morning Show, and do not forget Nacion airing Mondays at 5 p.m. on ESPN2. George, always appreciate it, pal.
You got it, bud. Anytime.
All right, you got to take care of yourself. George Sedano. Interesting stuff.